The last topic that we did was completely in depth on the security, domain security policies. We did go a lot deeper in that. And we also touched upon business process security policy, but we're going to build more on it today. We're going to see some different examples. And but to actually do the configuration, we need to complete our security group understanding so that we can put it into the picture. So for that, so about creation of security groups, you can create as many number of security groups as you need. There is no limit to that, but just creating security groups does not solve your problem in every case. It's just add more maintenance to it. But in our case, we'll work with a business process for maybe home contact change, or let's say emergency contact change. So we use this particular report to filter out our default definitions, which are nothing but your Workday delivery. So we'll first walk through the policy of it. We'll go in the view mode. We won't edit it as of now. We'll just understand the policy. So in yesterday's session, we did go through this particular visual. We did the first one and the second one. We talk about this one. I think, do they have any in this? Maybe I'll have to pick a different example. Let's pick termination. Let's look at the policy for termination. So who can start the business process? So let me go ahead and create a security group real quick. You don't have to replicate that particular setup. I just created a security, which we are calling as test velvet, and that is what we are going to use in our business process policy. So I want to give this particular group access to initiate the termination. And within initiate, I want to give them access to terminate an employee, which is from the worker profile, and also give them access so that if anyone is submitting their resignation, it automatically triggers a termination process. Okay, so what will I do is I'll again go here and go to the policy and I'll edit it. And I'll add the group here in the initiating action for terminate employee. I'll add that particular group here, which was test velvet, not just here, on the resignation piece as well. And let's say we want to give them access to, yeah, I think these ones are in. So I have two alerts because the system is saying that you have to activate your changes, which we discussed yesterday also, that you need to activate your changes. Until unless you don't do it, it won't have any effect on it. So I click OK. And then I run the task, activate pending security policy changes. Write some random code, but you have to be very descriptive here. This is a test environment, so I'm not adding anything here. Now, if I look at the policy again, we have our group here and also here. And if we refresh the page where we have our group, we'll also see that now this group has initiate access to terminate employee and also to the resignation, which inherently calls the termination process. So slowly and gradually, when we start giving access to this particular group, it will have these security access. And now let's say yesterday we talked about domain, right? That domain was particularly specific on our emergency contact. Okay, so I can now type in domain, search for emergency, which was this one, and give access again through the same process. In that case, I edited the permissions for business policy, business process. Now I'm editing the permissions for domain. Now that we have our own security group, I just want to give it view access. And when you navigate to a group's security, it tells you what access this particular security group will give you. Again, as a custom, every time you make any policy changes, you have to add those changes here every single time. So even if you're doing 100 changes at once, you run this particular task once, it will make effective all those 100 changes. But if you're doing one change, you still have to run this task. Okay. Now let's look at the group again. Now the group has domain access and business process access. It has the domain access to this particular security policy, but view only. And in the business process, this has access to initiate for termination business process. So this is how Ahmad yesterday had a question on walking again through how we make the changes to the groups. To the security policies, this is how we do it. Now, coming to the piece where we still need to cover is this particular section. Who can do action steps in the business process? So we covered who can do action, who can start the business process. We also covered yesterday who can do actions on the entire business process, which is your correction, cancel, rescind, reassignment, deny, resubmit, all those. Now, what is this? Who can do actions in the process? So if you just read the line here, who can do action steps in the process? The previous one was on the entire. In the process means whatever steps we have within a process. So you see there are a few steps here. Oh, there's only one, like action step. So this is a step within the process. So to define the security of that, we have a separate segment which takes care of that. Who can do action steps in the business process? Now, this will completely vary. Now, if I look at the policy here, there's only one action step. Who can do action steps in the process, which is review employee termination, manage business process. It says do not use, so we do not need to look at it. On-demand termination. So if I go here at my definition, this is an action steps, which is calling out for assigned roles. Now, why is it not there? It is just giving me these steps. So yeah, so this one makes more sense. So as you can see, there are multiple steps here within the business process. You have a review employee termination. You then have an approval step. But not every step you see is accounted in that particular segment of your security policy. So we're talking about who can do action steps in the process. So there are some action steps which are owned by this process, like review employee termination. That is part of this process. You can also add this one and the other, not this one as well. But only this one is added. So the reason, if I look at this step, which is review employee termination, you're able to get this security group here is because it's added in the policy in that particular section. So if I look at the review here, this is what that group is. AF Office Manager, I think that's the one. Yes. AF Office Manager, HR Partner. Now we don't have access to edit the policies here, but if I remove this group from here, as of today, your business process will give error and it will continue to fail until we fix it. So again, this would be individual. It will be specific to each business process. No two business process will have the same policy. There'll be different groups managing different business processes. So you can add multiple groups here, but the security of that group only, even if I try to edit this particular process, so I want to edit this, okay, and I want to add more security groups here. So there's an option so the list that you see here, I think there are about more than 20 groups here. All are listed down here. You want to give a spot check, let's say SK Office Manager, United Enterprise Manager. It will be in the list here. They're 40 plus. See here, SK Office Manager, United Enterprise Manager. If your group is here in the policy, then only you can add it there. So let's say I want to give access to, which was already there. I'll just keep it to that. Now, when you make a change to business process, you don't need to activate the policies because you're not working with policies, you're working with business plans. Let's say if I want to make any changes to add more groups who can review the employee termination. So I went into the edit mode of that business process. And what I was showing is that the list that you see here is coming from your security policy for this particular step. If a security group is not listed here, that cannot be added here. So you can verify, let's say we want to add IKG HR partner and IKG HR administrator also here. The only way system is allowing us to do it is because it's added into the security policy, HR administrator and HR partner. So when you're working with business processes, a very common problem that consultants face is they're not getting the right security group here. And the reason for that is because they have not fixed the security policy. So 3 sections to your security policy: initiation. Now you also know how to work with who can do action steps in the process. Now, another trick here, which Workday has here, I won't say it's a trick, is let's say if I pick up any other business process. So in this business process, we have these different action steps like change organization assignments, propose compensation change. Now, these are independent business processes in itself. Right, I'll show you that. So this is an independent business process which we are using as a sub-process here in one of our business processes. So this security group is defined on this process, not on your overall change job process. So this means we are kicking it off, which means the initiation. So this Charlotte HR partner should be defined in our security groups here. So any business process, another common problem that consultants face is like the major issue is not getting the right security group. Either it's not added into your security policy, or they're looking at a business process which also is an independent business process. So they have to check the security for that process, not the parent process where it's being used. So change organization assignment, let's say if I take an example of this, you can run it ad hoc on a worker as well. That is what this means. And here we are using it as a sub-process.
Okay.
That is what it means. Like, for example, termination. So if someone initiates a termination, initiates a resignation, first step is initiation of resignation, and then it calls off termination. So that means termination becomes a sub-process. So anything not working in termination, you will have to check the security for termination, not for the resignation process. Because you're calling out some other process from a process. So the security of those process will be individually on that particular process. Like this action review step is part of this process. So the security, this ABI manager will be defined here. But these are independent business process in itself. So their security will be defined on these processes only, not the change job process, which we are looking at. Anytime you get lost in, when you are doing any observation, doing any navigation, focus on this visual. The process is the same. Now, this covers majority of our business process, understanding the concepts, the practice. The only thing that we have left is related to the security groups, which in this particular tenant is kind of restricted. So I have requested the support team to give me temporary access to a tenant, which helps us create, because the other one I cannot just loan it in the middle of the session. So I've requested them to give me an access at least for 1 hour tomorrow so that I can demo it properly for creation of the security group. Else it will be, and that's an important part. We need to know how to create security group. And it's not, it's easier than understanding the overall piece of security. So now, when we look at this particular visual, it should make sense to all of you. The question, the scenario that we have, it's written on the top, for example, to determine whether a user is allowed to run a given task. You need to consider the following. Now, you look it from left to right or right to left, it should make sense. So let's go from left to right first. The first question is this user allowed to run this task? All right, so we'll look at the user. Let me bring my pen here. So we first look at the user and then check which security group is that user associated with, right? And then we check that security group to be a member of which security policy. Basically, the security policies are giving them the permissions, right? And then we look at the domain to which this task is secured. So this task is definitely secured in a domain. And the one thing that we're checking here is the security policy directly, which is associated with that particular domain, has this group as a member. So everything comes down to your security policy, whether it's a business process or a domain security policy. You want to give them access, it all comes down here. Now let's read it from right to left. You have a task. Definitely that task is secured in some domain. Definitely that domain has that security policy. Domain security policy will also have some security groups, which will give them access to this task right here. And if this user is a member of this security group, then this user will be able to access that task. I cannot just go in and assign a user to a task or to a domain, as a matter of fact, or to a policy. All of them are wrong. You can only go through a security group, which is then added to your policies. This is the same thing we have here. That which will go. It was on the whiteboard. Exact same thing. Now, the reason I'm going through this is because there are some, again, the same thing. You have a functional area which covers your domains and business process, and each domain has its policy. Each business process has its policies, and then we have security groups, which gives you that access, and users are associated with your security groups. It's the same thing being visualized in a different way. And once you are aware of which domain or business process you need to make change for, you make those changes, and once you have completed your editing, you have edited your policies, the next step is activating those changes. Obviously, you have also to test them. So in real world, the majority of the cases that you will receive for security is one, please provision a security group or a member more access than what they have. So you have two options. One is either add them in a security group, which is giving them the access they need, or create a new security group, assign it to the right domain or business process, which will give them that access. Every single time, these are the primary two solutions that you will go with. So every single time you have to troubleshoot anything related to security, these are the two primary solutions for it. But sometimes, let's say you have a user who is associated with a security group and has the security, but you want to add more security to it. Still, in that case, you still follow these same two logics as either add the security group to more domains or give user access to more security groups. Only two primary solutions. Though there are some nuances which comes as advanced, there's something also called as advanced security, which covers your intersection groups, your organization membership groups, your rule-based, like a lot of segmented based groups. But we are far from there. To go there, we have to first understand these basics. And trust me, if you understand these basics of working with security, you can literally learn anything and everything related to security for Workday, whether it's advanced or basic security. But you need to first really crystal clear your concepts on how this works. So yes, so the reason I was navigating through this presentation is for a specific purpose is this presentation has 3 scenarios. Yes. So at the end of the presentation, you have 3 real world examples, which you can literally go through, and just by reading them, it will make a lot of sense. Like you will, if I go through the first one, it says we need to provide a HR partner role to an employee, Jane, for the sales organization. This group already exists. What steps need to be taken? So you have the answer here, but you first need to think for yourself what it should be. This is a very simple one. Then you have another example. So make sure at least you read these, because once we have the security groups, like the tenant that I'm requesting for, if I get that access by tomorrow, good. Else we'll do that next week. There is a little more things to the security groups which we must know. Okay, and then this is a little complex one, but I'll still request you to give it a shot and see if you can get answers to what you're looking for. But other than that, observe, navigate, look at different policies, look at different processes and their policy, look at different domains and their policies. Just observe them. Try to connect the dots. Put yourself in a situation where you are looking for security for something. How would you go about it? That should be the right question you should be asking yourself. And then find the answer for it.